Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Hype Mini Reviews, where hype comes to die. I'm Skurita, and well, after going through a festival of older movies and games, it was time for me to tackle something more modern and current. Therefore, Silksong. Half the critics say that it's the best thing since sliced bread, and the others say that it's the antichrist of difficulty. I have lots of experience in Metroidvanias and played the Hollow Knight, and spent the last weeks bouncing around hazards in Farloon in order to tell you which side is right. So, what is it about? Silksong is a Metroidvania game made by Team Cherry and a direct sequel to their previous game Hollow Knight. Its most notable feature is that it started as a simple DLC to Hollow Knight, but it got so big it ended becoming its own game, and it took nothing less than 7 years to be launched. It reached mimetic status since every time the community asked for updates in its development, Team Cherry couldn't answer with anything other than "we are still working on it" because they didn't want to spoil the surprises. And thus, lots of people joked about the whole community being gaslit. But now it was released, and such was the eagerness of the players that the game broke all the platforms it was being sold on. Team Cherry is probably swimming in money right now. Many years after the events of Hollow Knight, Hornet, the valiant defender of Hallownest, was captured by weird cultist bugs donning white cloth and brought to the kingdom of Farloon for some unspecified reason. By chance, she gets free and now is driven to investigate why such cult would travel so far to seize her, exploring this weird place full of new bugs to find, both friend and foe. Visuals. If one of the things that separated Hollow Knight from its peers was the hand-drawn style, here it's cranked up to 11. In her quest to find the truth behind Farloon, Hornet will go through verdant forests, 3 of them in fact, gilded halls, mines, deserts, ice peaks and more. Each one has a different color scheme and style, so 2 forest areas won't feel the same. One of the most interesting aspects style-wise is that the bugs that will be found are cartoonish and simple in nature and attire, contrasting with the absurdly detailed backgrounds. For example, in the first animation you can see the symbol of Farloon in the very cage that is bringing Hornet into this new scenario, while her design and the design of the bugs that captured her are simpler in comparison. Speaking of, cutscene animations are rather simple and brief, but well done and smooth. The animation of the characters and enemies is also one of the highlights of the game. They vary in complexity, and while they haven't reached the levels of Thunder Lotus games, the makers of Sundered and Spiritfarer, they never dip below quite good, and the animation of some of the most elaborate bosses are downright hypnotic. The character designs are also quite good in their simplicity. Hornet has 3 main colors: black, white and red, and their combination ensures that she will stand out no matter the environment. Are you in an area with prevalence of red, her white mask will stand out. Prevalence of white, red cloak stands out. Her relationship with her nemesis Lace is also depicted through the designs. Lace's head is basically what would happen if you picked Hornets and turned it upside down with opposite color schemes. Characters' choice of attire hints to their specific allegiance, and details are everywhere for sharp eyes to find. Speaking of, characters are far more colorful here. In Hollow Knight there was a prevalence of grey and darker palettes, but Silksong? Everything's fair game. There is the overall themes of bells, music, strings and religion, and of course a lot of inspiration from Soulsborne games, especially Bloodborne and other Metroidvanias such as Blasphemous, even if I didn't like that one though. And several kinds of enemies to fight, each group in its own area following their own themes, as in you'll be fighting the same models of pilgrims in your ascension to Farloon, but the higher you reach, tougher they get with different robes and clothes. Now, one thing that attracted my attention, and that sadly I won't be able to give examples due to spoilers, is that there is a really good integration between gameplay and the environmental details. What I can say is that if you're in an area and suddenly find elements of another area, like if you're in a forest and start seeing pipes, this means that there is another area close, sure. If you start seeing things like corpses of enemies from an entirely different area nearby, this means that there is an entrance or shortcut somewhere waiting to be discovered. Several elements that would be considered normal background stuff like statues are actually significant, even if far later in the game. This design choice gives a really good organic feel to the map, making the transitions between areas far smoother. You start at the bottom of a chasm, climb from the bottom vegetation to the rocky underground, and from there you start reaching civilization through the mines, and these areas are huge. Tying up with some gameplay aspects, the map allows a lot of exploration to be done at the player's pace. I really missed a good Metroidvania with large rooms that you could just hop around poking at nooks and crannies. Now, one thing to criticize about the visual aspects is that several fights end up cluttered due to several effects and attacks done in tiny quarters, with explosions piling up on the effects of Hornet being hit and enemies overlapping, but the biggest visual problem is that a lot of stuff is hidden. Important stuff, and hidden too well, as in you won't know how you can proceed in several quests unless you keep rubbing Hornet against every single nook and cranny as if she had a fetish for walls, or just look up a guide. Breakable walls are visually different, yes, but not well enough to pinpoint the location. Some slight cracks won't do if your wall is dark brown or dark grey against black background, and Hornet is in the middle of a perilous climb, which ensures that going 100% will be a small headache. There is an item called the far side which supposedly helps you to see what you are missing, but it just tells you the completionist percentage and some grey dots on your inventory. It's downright useless to find missing collectibles or hidden passageways on the map. Speaking of, the relationship with the map is roughly unchanged from the first game. Just like before, you need to buy or find the map for each area you visit, but even then it won't show the whole thing. You have to explore on your own and sit on a bench in order to fill the blanks. Your position isn't shown either. You have to equip a specific pin in order to expose your location, and the game expects you to manually pin the points of interest such as collectibles, secret passages, and NPCs all by yourself, the exception being quick travel spots, benches, and vendors. It's quirky, offering some challenges, but overall not really bad. Gameplay. Normally, I'd go through a long analysis, but I will just skip to the chase this time. Complete Hollow Knight before playing this game. Don't even think about playing Silksong without playing Hollow Knight. Silksong started as a DLC, and it shows in all aspects, including the fact that it's harder than that. Sadly, it doesn't introduce well several mechanics that were optional in Hollow Knight, such as pogo bouncing on hazards and enemies. Now, with that out of the way, mechanically, Silksong is an improvement over several aspects of Hollow Knight. This game is still a Metroidvania where your main character explores the environment and progressions given through special abilities that enable said character to overcome previous hurdles. For combat, most of the attacks are directional melee strikes, and there are several side weapons to help. Here, Hornet has 3 different kinds of tools replacing the charms from the previous game: side weapons, yellow and blue tools. Side weapons are spent through combat and need to be replaced through the use of shards by sitting on a bench. Another interesting addition are the crests, which work in-game akin to combat styles. They modify Hornet's attack patterns, offer different slots, and each one has a specific ability, such as draining enemy health or replacing tools on the fly. They are highly situational due to their immense differences, and some ending downright game-breaking, while others are precise tools for the right situation. And just like the previous game, you heal and use special attacks through pulses charged by energy gathered by smacked enemies. Now here comes the bizarre part. This is a game of extremes, as in it has several superbly good aspects and really bad design choices in nearly every single element. Every single one. As a Metroidvania, Silksong is so good that I actually stalled completing it because I didn't want the experience to end, and I only recall this happening 3 other times, one of those being Hollow Knight. Team Cherry is absurdly good at their craft because this is the only game I know where double jumping is fully optional, as in, their ability to fine-tune a map for platforming is such that the player can eschew one of the staples of the genre if they so wish. The map is big, allowing a lot of exploration, and better yet, unlike Metroid Dread, this game actually balances well speedrunning with normal gameplay. You are allowed to explore at your own pace and leisure. and reach main objectives through different paths and tailor your gameplay as you deem fit. But at the same time, their need to hide stuff behind secret passages is such that they hid crucial elements such as vendors behind fake walls and vital upgrades in places no sane player would think about checking, for example in the middle of a platforming challenge. By the last leg of the second act, I just said screw it and started looking at guides because I didn't have patience to smack every single wall. Hiding cameos or extras like health upgrades? Okay, but hiding vendors? Yes, Super Metroid had lots of hidden nooks and crannies, but it also had the X-ray vision upgrade. If pogo bouncing on hazards was optional in Hollow Knight, here it's crucial from the middle of the first act onwards, and the game doesn't properly explain how it works. I hate the Ubisoft model of a bunch of on your screen all the time, but Silksong does need a better tutorial. I didn't know I could do taunts until after I finished the game, and this sort of thing would have been hella useful in the exploration. Did you know that whenever you play the song in a needle, you can actually stun your opponents, and every single NPC you close will sing? I discovered this by accident. I breezed through said hazards because I cleared the path of pain in Hollow Knight and was trained, but I couldn't stop thinking that man, a newbie is going to suffer through these. And it gets worse. Way worse. Combat-wise, this game offers some of the best fights in a Metroidvania that I've played. Period. Widow and First Sinner were actually really thrilling fights for me, and you can't replace the feeling of changing builds and breeze through what would have been a gruesome fight. Many bosses have clear strategies and the window for you to adapt on the fly or change tactics. Some bosses may have really bad defenses against aerial attacks, others may be absolutely trounced with the right tool or the right quest, and this is insanely hard to program nowadays. But this game also made me shout out loud, what the f was Team Cherry thinking? And I'm not a gaming journalist who can't clear a tutorial. I'm an adrenaline junkie that 100% clears games like Sekiro for relaxation. No, seriously, I'm such an adrenaline junkie that I can't play games like Alien Isolation or Amnesia because I can't just stay quiet and not grab a shotgun to charge the monster. There are several awful design choices here and severe lack of proper balance in difficulty. The first act was really unbalanced due to the lack of proper power-ups and how several enemies do double damage while being meat sponges. But its middle and the second act are by far the best, since the map opens up in a way you can properly explore at your own leisure. Making things better, the game gives you tools to do such. Is this a difficulty boss fight? Try changing crests, or different weapons or tools. The combinations make a world of difference during fights. Then the last leg of the second act arrives and you start to see all those problems piling up in quite fast. One of these are the gauntlet rooms, places where you are locked and you have to beat some waves of enemies. At the start, it's simple, and it's a good practice to get you acquainted with the combat system, 2 or 3 waves. But then, the game starts to throw gauntlet rooms after gauntlet rooms, reaching 2 ludicrous spots with 10 waves. A whole tower full of nothing but gauntlets, or worse, a gauntlet before a very hard boss that you can't skip and has to redo every time you lose. How about a boss where, if you lose, you have to redo a whole map full of annoying enemies? There is a checkpoint in the middle, but guess what? It's also hidden behind a secret wall. Several of these problems were ironed out years ago by other games, to the point most people agree that no, going through an entire stage or gauntlet just to have another go at the boss or having a boss kill you in 3 hits isn't hard, it's just frustrating. It's different from Sekiro and Hi-Fi Rush because those games mostly test your mastery of a single element within it, the parry and follow the beat respectively. While Silksong sometimes feels as if too much in love with the idea of difficulty piling up elements. Again, what's mostly bizarre is how uneven everything is. Some bosses will be absolutely thrilling to fight, have a checkpoint nearby, while others will force you to tedious tracks or worse, slow and boring cutscenes over and over and over, like riding a slow elevator. Lastly, 2 achievements are also locked behind speedrunning. I know that it's also happening in Hollow Knight, but to me, speedrunners are such a tiny fraction of a player base that it's not worth giving specific achievements for that. The joy of speedrunning is speedrunning itself. I did it a while ago. It would be akin to giving an achievement for making new mods in a game. Overall, Silksong is one of the best Metroidvanias I've played. It has a really good gameplay with a really good map and a really good set of bosses, but no, it's definitely not newbie friendly with sudden spikes in frustration in baffling decisions. The game is big and long enough that a player can endure or even forget about said spikes, but I'm not surprised that a lot of people gave it up. Writing. This will be an interesting one. Going through the adventures of those needle-wielding bugs, it was clear to me that Team Cherry was one of the few studios that nailed, pun intended, the Dark Souls story style. In said style, you have a cohesive main story that you can clearly understand regardless of the extras, and there's a lot of flavor text to flesh out the scenario. But it's quite evident that Hollow Knight has a solid structure, whereas Silksong was more of a what if we'd added X over and over and over through development. So it's basically the difference between getting a takeout and grabbing whatever is in your pantry to make noodles. Hey, this hand would be great with onion and asparagus. Just throw everything into the pot. At the same time, the game's overall plot is simpler and more straightforward than Hollow Knight. There is no real mystery to discover what the hell is going on, and there will be a lot of retreading from the first game. Again, just because it's simpler doesn't mean it's bad, because the simplicity of the overall plot allowed it a lot of space to flesh out NPCs and focus on characterization. Speaking of, I started the game, had Hornet hop around the starter area, she found the first NPC and she was actually polite with said NPC. It was then that I discovered that Team Cherry isn't North American but rather it's Australian. I really liked Hornet's characterization. It's interesting, subtle and complex after all. As the daughter of a king and raised in the middle of a serious crisis with some side dish of political turmoil, Hornet learned to be diplomatic but fierce whenever needed. She's polite but driven. Kind enough to go out of her way to help people, but absolutely will not let herself be swayed from her mission, nor let herself be used or let personal offenses slide. Her stance is more reactive. You may be a maggot-ridden bug in the depths of the filthiest dungeons, she will still be polite and apologize for intruding your abode. But if you raise a fuss, she won't be afraid of telling you to stop and will forbid you from actually threatening her. She can also be quite sassy from time to time, but won't be a and a lot of her personality comes from her journal entries, like how she likes fluffy things and her affinity for contraptions. Adorable! The overall NPCs you find through the adventure are also quite interesting to check. Their purpose is to transmit the themes of death, accepting death, devotion and kindness, nature versus nurturing, and more. You see pilgrims who are rather naive to the misery surrounding them, builders who, no matter how many times things get grim, try to cling to hope, no matter what happens, irredeemable bastards, and more. Another difference from its precursor is both the lighter atmosphere and the willingness to poke fun and subvert its own tropes. You see characters that at first glance look like Pio's miserable jerks, but will actually be nice people, and the opposite. Sometimes the game will set up a scene to be some dark, miserable fight and subvert it with a literal last second, or just sucker punch you from nowhere with a really sad scene. Again, if the overall story is simpler than its predecessor, the cast is far more colorful and memorable here with larger-than-life bugs, contemplative explorers, and other characters whom you grow attached to in this long journey. Team Cherry really did a good job pacing their interactions, so you worry about the final fate of each one. I personally love Trobio and his over-the-top personality. About the story itself, like I said, it's simple and follows the basic style of the Dark Souls formula. Hornet arrives in the kingdom of Farloon and is set to defeat whoever ordered her kidnapping. There's a lot of focus in the themes of music, control and mechanization, with Farloon being a clockwork punk brass-filled utopia puppeteered from above. A lot of the side information about the kingdom itself and its relations with its citizens and other kingdoms is delivered through snippets in the equipment sections, logs and foes you defeat and some artifacts. There's also the slabs and other signs from which you can check more, but sadly you don't keep logs about these, nor you keep logs about normal bugs that you won't fight. Considering the sheer size of this game, it would have been really useful to keep what you found in an obscure part of the map written to be seen at any time in your logs, or about a character that you've only found by accident. I really like the Farloom name, it's a clever wordplay. It's far, it's loom, and it's looming from afar. Most of the story, both Farloom's and the overall plot, is delivered at the last leg, where you have to delve into the characters and how things came to be. I have to say that the adding stuff as they go approach made the already long story feel just a bit too bloated, especially in the last act, but luckily this isn't overbearing. It can be a bit tiresome to get everything at once, so don't be afraid of taking breaks between acts. This is, I repeat, a huge game that won't hesitate in hitting your gut with surprise haymakers out of nowhere. For example, the Clockwork Dancers fight did crush me. It was really good in its simplicity, tying up with the music and rhythm. I won't spoil it though. So overall, it's less focused on the story per se and more about the character interactions, so still quite good. Soundtrack. Yeah, this is also a no-brainer, which is quite a relief since nowadays most games I'm reviewing at least try to pump up some nice tunes. Most of the soundtrack is delivered in an orchestrated style, and since Team Cherry did their homework very well on what makes a Metroidvania tick, the music is pleasant to the ears and able to be looped over and over and over without being tiresome. I may get the soundtrack to listen to on my daily walks. Said music gets heavily ingrained with the scenario and fights, like for example the aforementioned as Clockwork Dancers, guiding the mood and the feelings of the players. And another highlight is one of the boss songs where the boss herself sings it. And if you knock her out, the singing stops while the music itself keeps going. Surprising, there is a lot of voice acting here, but no grand speeches about what is a man. All bugs speak in their Simlish language, and there is a lovely amount of care to individual dialects alongside an overall solid voice acting from everyone involved, meaning bugs from different locations will speak with their own gibberish with specific intonations. Most games nowadays will just have hit the repeat button and keep at it. Final thoughts. After finishing Silksong, I have to say that both sides had a point in this discussion. This is still one of the best Metroidvanias I've played, period. It has a superbly done map, platforming, thrilling boss fights, interesting characters that you grow attached to, but it also has several problems that are sources of insane frustration and cheap difficulty rather than honest challenge. Luckily, Team Cherry is working on it to alleviate the problems, but for now I'd suggest that you either wait for some months till the problems are ironed out, or even better, get Hollow Knight and play it. If you can clear the White Palace and even better, the Path of Pain, you'll be able to handle this game. If not, there is no shame in watching a Let's Play. Spoilers. I really like Hornet's personality. It was really well built. As the child of the Worm King and the Weaver Matron, she has the affinity for building and weaving. She was raised in the middle of a crisis, daughter of a political alliance, raised by 3 different powerful women and huge expectations placed on her tiny shoulders. The results are ingrained well within her personality in-game. She's often hard with herself, but at the same time lets cracks slip through her rigid, disciplined behavior. For example, she admits having fun with carnival games, and one can think that her going, "this is just training," is an excuse she just gives herself. This is a long game split in 3 acts. The first act depicts Hornet arriving in Farloon and trying to reach the Citadel. The second act has her exploring the Citadel and fighting its goddess, the Grandmother Silk. To reach the third act and thus the real 100% ending, you need to finish the game twice, but luckily each reboot puts you exactly before the last boss fight. In said third act, you visit the 4 kingdoms destroyed by or influenced by Farloon. The story of said kingdoms would have been far better if partially placed on the second act, culminating in the third act. After all, you're already rushing to beat a huge menace, and the game asks you to stop and dwell upon more tragedy. It pulls the player from the climax and feels a bit like filler. In fact, the whole sequence where you go back from seeing the pit could have been cut, because it feels like padding. Go to the slugs tells you to make the flower, then you delve into the abyss. The battles against the rulers of said kingdoms vary. Some are interesting, others tend to be exhausting. For example, the fight against the Scar Queen was really good, but also becomes a battle of attrition because she has an enormous health. I ended having to basically switch to an ultra offensive strategy to have a chance, which invalidates all other possible builds. Speaking of, the last boss battle against Lace sucks. It just sucks in several aspects. This is a huge arena of pitch black against a pitch black foe that fills the whole arena with pitch black attacks, which makes it easy to get lost in what's going on. And make things worse, she's way too tanky, does double damage on touch, and is so fast that leaves very few windows of retaliation. This means you have to navigate a hell of black tentacles, dash towards a creature that will disappear in a blink of an eye, and if you miss, double damage. It ends in a battle of attrition just like the Scar Queen, where I had to go hyper offensive. And while I understand that the ending draws a lot from Dark Souls' brevity is the weight of the soul style, where they are now montage would have helped a lot. I would really like to see what happened to many of the citizens of Farloom. That all out of the way, I really enjoyed the subversions, especially the Flea Festival. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today. See you all next time. If you will enjoy it, like and subscribe.